Hi everybody, Fabrizio Cross here with Electrom Light Electric Vehicle. Well, I am going to change the color on my Electrom. I have been running this cool hot rod red for the last couple of years, but every once in a while you feel like you got to mix things up, and so I thought this would be a great opportunity to demonstrate one of the really cool things about the Electrom is that we use automotive wrap vinyl to do our colors. So instead of paint, we're using colored vinyl that is nice and stretchy. It's designed to last for years on automobiles, so certainly no problem on something like the Electrom. And what's really cool about it is that it's quite easy to change your color scheme. You can basically pull your old color off with a heat gun, which I have here, and reapply using some simple tools. I am actually on vacation now, and I'm up on one of the Gulf Islands. So I have found a shop space to work in. It's a little cluttered, but the main thing is it's outside of the wind, so there won't be a whole lot of dust blowing around. Anyone who does automotive wrap for the cars will tell you that having a dust-free work area is very important because you don't want to get dust trapped beneath the surface of the vinyl because it makes bumps. A few little tiny specks here and there, not the end of the world, but if you have a whole lot, it's going to not look great. So key thing basically is a wind and dust-free room. And by dust-free, I don't mean there's no dust in here. I just mean there's no wind to blow it up and around. So I'm going to walk you through the process of removing the old vinyl and using what's called knifeless tape, which is a special tape that is used to set up your edges. What I won't cover, you can see on the bike behind me, there's some two-tone stuff going on. That's a little more complex. I'm not going to go into that today. We're just going to do a simple application of replacing this old vinyl with some new vinyl. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I have to do is I'm going to warm up the old vinyl, which will soften the glue, and that will allow me to peel away the old vinyl. Okay, so that has the vinyl removed, and it's probably hard to see from this angle, but as we peel off the vinyl, there's a couple of places where the adhesive from the vinyl has stuck to the plastic. I need to make sure I get that off because that will also leave bumps underneath the vinyl if I leave it there. So a couple of different ways to get this off. You can basically just rub it off with your fingers, just kind of like you're rubbing rubber cement off of a smooth surface. And that's what I'm going to do. You can also use alcohol, like rubbing alcohol, and I will do a surface clean with alcohol in a moment, but I like to just get this stuff off the old-fashioned friction way because I find it comes off nicely that way. You just kind of roll it off with finger pressure and rubbing. If I run into something particularly hard, then I might use some alcohol. Now, depending on your surface that you're working with, you can also use acetone to remove old adhesive. However, you need to be really careful with acetone when you're working on plastics. This is ABS plastic. Acetone will melt ABS plastic, and this surface here is polycarbonate. Acetone will also melt polycarbonate, not melt like drooping, but it'll cause a haze on the surface that you don't want. So while I do use acetone sometimes for other cleaning jobs, I don't use it when it's involving plastic because it's just too hard to know what's going to happen. So Nice generous amount of rubbing alcohol, and I'll start out by cleaning the surface where the vinyl is going to go, but I'll also want to clean all of the other surfaces as well, because as I lay that new vinyl on, it's going to drag across some of these surfaces, and the last thing we want it to do is pick up some dust or dirt. So once I've done my good deep clean of the new area where the vinyl is going to go, then I will use my alcohol cloth and working away from the surface where I'll be laying the vinyl, I'll just wipe all this dirt and grime, and this is just road grime that's accumulated over the last month since I last cleaned my bike. And should say up here I'm in the country and I'm at the end of a very long gravel road, so I have picked up quite a lot of grime. I've got to make sure I get all that stuff off. Okay, so we got some more glue here. Give that a good rub to get rid of it. Okay. That's looking pretty good. Okay, I've got that first layer of grime done. Now I'm going to use a fresh piece of paper towel, some more rubbing alcohol, and I'll do one more clean of the edge surfaces. When you're working with vinyl, it's important that it stick everywhere, but where it's most important that it stick is at the edges, because that's where it will start to peel. So surface preparation is everything. You want to have your surfaces good and clean and free of all oil or contaminants, because you want that vinyl to get a good, strong, adhesive stick. And a little bit more grime came off there, so it's a good thing I did that second pass. Okay, now the next step. This is what's called knifeless tape. And this stuff was invented so that people who were applying wrap to automobiles, when you're trying to trim the edge of something, you do need to do it in place, because you really can't predict where the vinyl will lay, because it's going to stretch as you heat it and push it on. So you need to trim your edges in place. If you take an X-Acto knife and cut along there, well, you're going to either cut into your plastic, in my case, or in the case of an automobile, you're going to cut into the paint, which you don't want to do. So knifeless tape is an amazing invention, and what it is it's a little tiny filament of very high strength string, basically, embedded in tape. So we can lay this down, and when we're done putting our vinyl down, we'll be able to pluck that piece of string up, and it will cut through our vinyl in the shape that we've laid our tape. So very handy stuff. I will start here. You want to leave yourself a little bit of a tail, because you do need a place to start. And I'm going to basically just follow this contour on my body panel, because that's what I've done in the past, and I know that looks good. You can always change your mind, pull the tape up, and then put it back down. And that's the nice thing about this tape too. If you were using an X-Acto knife to cut, you only get one chance. But with knifeless tape, you can lay that tape down, have a look at where that cut's going to be. If it doesn't look perfect, you can just pull it up and do it again. Now once you've laid your tape, you want to go over it and really press it down into your surface, because when you're putting the vinyl down here, it's got a sticky back, and you need to reposition that vinyl a couple times. You want to make sure you accidentally don't pull up your tape before you've got everything laid out the way you want it. So I've got my tape down, but even though I washed my hands before this, your hands always produce a little bit of oil. It's just the nature of the human body. So I'm now going to just do a pass over with alcohol over the tape surface, just to make sure that I'm free of oils. Okay, so my knifeless tape is laid, And now I can basically take some measurements. Vinyl is not the most expensive thing in the world, but it's not cheap either. So it's a good idea to have a rough idea of how much you need before you start cutting and slashing. So we're looking at about 52 inches long. By about 11 inches high. Okay, so I needed 52 inches, and this vinyl is 5 feet, which is 60 inches. So I'm absolutely fine there. And we're basically going to need two pieces that are kind of diagonals. And I can get them both out of, one sheet. So I'm going to think about my cuts before I make them. Always nice to have a good long straight edge for this sort of thing. And I know that I need 11 inches high down to so I'm going to make my cut. I'll end up with a piece that's 11 by over 52 by a couple of inches high at this end for the skinny end down here, and then I will have the reverse piece for the other side. All right, here's our piece. Have that there. Put this stuff away for now. Okay, our vinyl is cut. We've got our surface, we're ready to go. Now, before I peel off the adhesive back on this, I'm going to do a dry fit to make sure that this vinyl will cover the surface that I'm working with. And it's going to work just fine, so that's good. I sit down here, might as well give myself more room to work with. All right, we're ready to go. We're ready to lay some vinyl on here. Now, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on putting down automotive vinyl. If you really want to get deep into the subject, there are tons of YouTubes on the internet that you can look at, and probably lots of better techniques than what I'm about to show. However, if you're an Electrom owner and you want to know, is it easy to change my color? This will help. It'll show you that, yes, it is easy to change your color. So the tools we need to put down our vinyl. We need a heat gun, and you want to make sure that you're not running too hot. And we need a squeegee. And typically for vinyl, you're using a soft edge squeegee. So this is a squeegee that has a little piece of felt glued to it. And you can buy these on the internet for applying automotive vinyl. That's exactly what they're for. They're great. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is trim off what I know is excess material. And because I do have this edge here that I don't want to lose track of, I'm going to peel a little bit of the backing off of here. And just lightly stick it down so that I know that I'm lined up. Most vinyl comes with a cap, which is a sheet of clear plastic on top, and that's designed to protect the vinyl while it's in shipment, but it does make it difficult to stretch when you're heating it up. So you want to remove that This is noisy stuff, isn't it? So we'll want to remove that before we start applying our vinyl. Okay, so we've got our vinyl all lined up and we are ready to start laying it down. I've peeled off some of the backing and I'm just checking all of my alignments and it looks good. So I think I can start putting this stuff down. A little bit of heat allows you to stretch the vinyl and also it activates the glue and causes it to stick. Now, as I said, there are lots of great vinyl laying tutorials out there. Do not for a moment think that what I'm doing is the only way to put down vinyl. In fact, I may be making lots of mistakes that you would not want to repeat. So do check other sources. But I have found this to work pretty well. And I'm going to get a really good stretch on here and then press it down. And as I said, if you make a mistake, you can always pull it back up and go again. One of the other key things with vinyl is you want to make sure that you've got it pressed into your crevices because it will have a tendency to lift. Now, vinyl does stretch. You can heat it up and push it down into a crevice, but your chances of having it stick and stay there are diminished. So it's really much better to physically get the vinyl into the crevices before stretching, and then you can make up for little imperfections with the stretching. Okay, so that has our first kind of rough application done. It's all pressed down. There's a few air bubbles that I'll have to work out. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to heat up and seat those edges, and then we can use the knifeless tape to cut our seam. Okay, so we have all of our edges done, and now it's time to trim off this piece here. To start knifeless tape, what they recommend you do is fold back on itself, pinch down, and pull. And so now you'll see what's happening here is I am pulling this string through the vinyl. I'll continue pulling the knifeless tape. That's going nicely. Just hold it off at the end so we get a complete cut. Then, when it's done, I can peel off the excess vinyl. Now I've peeled off that excess vinyl. The only remaining thing to do is to pull the tape out from behind the vinyl. So these are the remaining pieces of tape that we're holding our string down. And then using a bit of heat, I will finish adhering this piece of vinyl down onto our bike part. One last thing to do here is I need to trim out the holes where my bolts hold the part onto the bike. And because my fasteners have quite large heads that will cover up any blemishes, I don't have to be super careful on this. I just need to cut a hole that the bolt can pass through. So that's it. I've applied my vinyl to this piece of the body panel. As you can see, we have a nice crisp finish where the knifeless tape was used. We are getting good adhesion, and these holes may look ragged, but as I said, they will be covered by bolt holes, so that's our bolt heads, so that's not a problem. And the only thing left to do is put it on the bike and we can check it out. All right, and here we have the finished product with the orange and the teal. I think it looks quite sharp. Managed to get the vinyl down pretty clean despite the fact that I was working in a slightly dusty environment. And yeah, tell me what you think in the comments. I think this is a pretty fine looking bike. And here's an interesting detail. The LED lights, the running lights, are buried in the vinyl. So you can see how we've basically covered it up with vinyl and then cut the lights back out. And I think it makes for a fairly clean, I mean, not perfectly clean, but a fairly clean way to do the lights, especially where the LED is buried, is underneath the Lexan. And then here, let's turn it on. And you can see how bright those LEDs are. Okay, that concludes the how to rewrap your Electrom demo. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you soon.